all good. There we are. I'll let people trickle in. Welcome everyone who's joining at the moment. That'll slowly start to fill up, and if you're not familiar with the setup, and you haven't done these webinars before, I'll do that while we're letting people join. There'll be polls that'll be popped up while we're talking, and as well you can submit questions, upload them, all those sorts of things. But we'll kick off in just a second. I'll let people jump on. All right, I think that's a good number to start. We'll let people trickle in as we go, but happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Go On Speaker Series. I'm super excited for the topic we're doing today, but I'd like to start, as always, with an acknowledgement of country, and just the land in which we gather, the fact that, I'd like to acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging, and the traditions of storytelling that have been passed down to allow talks and meetings and gatherings like this to happen in the uniquely Australian way that we have, and the impact of Indigenous culture on Australian culture. And with that, I think I'd really love to introduce some of our guests as well, but I won't do it justice. So Jason, I'll get you to introduce yourself first.
I am Jason Nightingale from Elite Athlete Business School. Played professional rugby league for the St. George Illawarra Dragons for 13 years. And through that time, did a little bit of study and went on a path towards learning. And we started our own business in teaching business education in 2015 with my business partner Rebecca Cook, and it's been a great learning experience ever since, and 2 years retired now and learning more every day.
And Dan, could you introduce yourself to everyone?
Yep, so my name's Dan Hunt. My picture would obviously be a little bit different to the one that was sent out with the memo. I've got a full face beard now. But it's still me. Look, I'm the founder of the Mental Health Movement, which is a company that specialises in developing and maintaining mentally healthy, supportive workplaces. I also played with Jason. We were teammates for 9 years in the NRL, and we also did our juniors coming through the ranks together. So we've known each other for a very long time. But yeah, look, I don't even know now. I think I'm 5 or 6 years retired. Jace got a few more years out of his body than what I did. But absolutely loving what I'm doing now with the mental health movement. Go One's obviously one of our cherished partners in the work that we now do, being able to reach more people through a digital platform. But yeah, look, it's something very grateful, being able to play at the top level and then be able to use those experiences and my education to create something that is bettering the lives of a lot of Australians, and very lucky with the team that we've got as well around us, which you'll hear a little bit more as we go through this webinar. But very excited to be here. It's a good opportunity to connect with people, in particular in these times where obviously social distancing has disconnected a lot of us, but being able to use technology, it's a very, very good thing. So thanks for having us, and I hope on behalf of myself that you all get something out of it as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start, Dan, where I think all of this originally came about, and when I was talking to you individually, because the biggest thing with all the changes at the moment, especially with work, you're being told that resilience is at an all-time low. You need to develop more resilience. We need to get through all these changes. And I think if I hear the phrase now more than ever in these uncertain times, one more time, I'm just going to scream.
Yeah,
but
I'm with you.
I think that buzzword resilience is thrown around a lot, and was even before any of this went down. And the first point that I always love to come to with it is, what do you view resilience as? Like, what is this? What is it to you?
Yeah, look, for me, resilience is it's not one set thing. For me, it's, look, by definition, it's about bouncing back. And but for obviously through my own life experience and everything I've done through my upbringing, through my education, through my NRL career, resilience, I believe, it's about becoming adaptable to your situation. And it's about working through and persevering through whether it's change, challenge, or adversity in life without giving up. And one of the things that I really do believe is part of resilience, or being resilient, is actually struggling, because how do you actually implement resilience if you don't actually struggle? So It is about understanding that we are going to have the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs, the struggles, the good times. But resilience is about having a support network. It's about having coping strategies, tools, mechanisms, understanding, mindsets. It's about having all these different things that we can put into our resilience kit bag and use as we go through life. And the thing about, I guess, where resilience has come into play with the global pandemic of COVID-19 is it's unprecedented. No one's been through it. So the carpet's been pulled out from underneath people, and it's been added on top of all the other things that people are going through, which is added fuel to the fire. So not a lot of us, we were just getting by day to day, dealing with what we were dealing with on a daily basis. Now we've got all this on top of it. People's resilience has come and it has been tested. And if one thing that we will come out the other side as an individual, as a family, as a friendship circle, a workplace, as a community, as a globe, we are going to be more resilient with what we've been through, because we've all have to adapt because we didn't have a choice. So resilience, for myself, it's about becoming adaptable, and it's about working through without giving up and using what you've got to be able to work through it.
And Jason, I know you work a lot with existing athletes as well as people across a bunch of spheres at the moment. And that's kind of where a lot of our discussions ended up, was you talking about the transition that people go through. Because I know when I was talking to you both beforehand, you were both talking about your own transition from kind of sporting life to business life, or to the next life. Do you think that's a similar scenario, or am I drawing two parallels?
Yeah, well, I think it is, and I agree with a lot of Dan saying around that bounce back. I think that is a big part of it, and it doesn't mean one sort of thing, but it is hard work. I think being resilient doesn't just come naturally. There's a lot of planning that has to go into bouncing back from certain situations and getting through these situations. And yeah, I think it does come out of growth and a lot of experience of past. So. Change is doesn't always sit well with a lot of people, and we've had a lot of change at the moment around the whole world. Where I suppose there is one good thing about that is we're all in it together, and there is a connection that we all have a common sort of enemy that we're fighting at the moment, and it's done together. Although we're apart, and things like this is what's giving us the ability to connect on a different level. And I think that innovation and the bounce back from that and what we learn from that will be the sort of thing that'll get us through and bring us back even stronger. So yeah, when you're talking about the transition sort of space, we train small business, and there's a couple of things that we train. We learn a lot as professional athletes. You live in a very environment that's very secluded and can be a kind of isolated, even though you are in a team place. So there is that transition to that, and something that can be learned out of small business, and the way that people in the outside world, there's so much to learn off them. And I think that's where we train our athletes from that sphere. Is there's a lot to be learned from entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of similarities and skills that I have back to corporate. So I think we try and train all the things that we learn as high performance athletes in that environment where feedback is so constant, so sometimes scathing, but also the way that you encourage and the way that you build people up also develops the biggest return. So we try and teach those skills that are talked about in the corporate world, as far as like teamwork and team first and that sort of stuff. You really do live and die by that in professional sports. So skills that we can tailor across build up a lot of leadership and a lot of the way that you live your life in that high performance environment. When you can put it into practice in a business, they're the sort of skills, emotional intelligence, the leadership stuff, time management, and the way that you present yourself is a really big part of adaptable skills from professional sports. And we had a bit of involvement in training Dan, his team in mental health. My business partner, Rebecca, she absolutely loves presenting and keynotes and training people in that space. And we had the opportunity to train Dan, his people. Chris Houston, I played with as well for quite a few years in sport. And so to be able to be part of people's journeys, there was a big part in that I know Dan's probably going to get to his story, but I think that part of it is that mental health continuum that Chris presented originally. Well, I hadn't heard it before he started training with us. So that's a really yeah, really interesting take on mental health. And I suppose I'll let you, Dan, explain a bit more that mental
Yeah,
health continuum.
I think as well, before I do that, is kind of what you were saying there, Jace. Like, as a professional athlete, you go through so many adversities, both on and off the field, but that's no different to, say, the small business owner or the parent or the coal miner or whatever it is. It's not so much the change, challenge, or adversity that they're going through. What resilience is, how you be resilient and work through whatever that change, challenge, and adversity is. It's the same. That blueprint or that framework is the same, no matter what that is. And that's probably what the point that you're saying there is, that being a professional athlete, a lot of the players, when they retire, they don't actually realize the skill set that they've got, other than, doing weights and being strong and fast and agile. That's not really going to help you in a corporate office. But the hard work, the sacrifice, the dedication, the communication, the feedback, all those things that you learn as a player, that's transient into every other aspect of your life. But until you're actually told or shown that, which is what your business does, and that's probably one of the biggest things I took out of when we did the Powerful Presenting course, is that the skill sets that you learn throughout life and the changes and the adversities you go through, they are transient into every other aspect of your life. But a lot of us just don't have that self-awareness or that understanding that they are. So that's probably the biggest thing that we've taken out of that. And Jace's partner, she does a really good job with the Powerful Presenting course. Part of our onboarding program at Mental Health Movement is you actually have to complete that course. So all four of our main facilitators, we've all completed that. And part of that is also understanding your value system, kind of what your purpose is, your values, what your mission is, so that when you are a speaker, that you're living by what you're teaching, what you're educating on. And that's something that they do really well there. But look, what Jason was speaking about there as well was the mental health continuum. So some context around that. Resilience is a big part of what we do at the Mental Health Movement. And probably the most fundamental fact that we teach in our stage 1 of our blueprint is that mental health and mental illness are not the same thing. Where so many individuals within society, they think that mental health and mental illness are the same thing. And that's where a lot of this negative stigma comes from, because people disassociate themselves from, mental health doesn't affect me. But what they're really meaning is, mental illness doesn't affect me. Where mental illness, it affects 20% of the population, okay, in any 12-month period. But what about the other 80% of the population that are just managing their mental health? Because if we have a brain in our head, we have a mental health. And the better we look after our mental health, the better we look after ourselves, because that's the way we think, the way we act, and the way we feel. So what we've developed at the Mental Health Movement is our mental health continuum. And if I had 2 arms, I'd probably get it up so people could see it. But what it is, on one end of the continuum is mentally healthy, and on the other end of the continuum is ill. And it uses the traffic light colors. So it goes from green, yellow, orange, and red. And what it is, it's a tangible tool that you can use to check in with your own mental health to see where you are at. And depending on where you are at on that continuum, that gives you the indicator of what actions you need to put in place to help get yourself back up that continuum. And the thing about it is, we all slide down this continuum every single day, every second, minute, hour of every day, because we go through things in life that affect the way we think, act, and feel. Sliding down the continuum does not mean necessarily you've got a mental illness. It just means that the way you think, act, and feel is being challenged. So being able to have that resilience, like Jason said about bouncing back, but it's about what are your support networks? What are your coping strategies around your self-care? What different mindsets can you use and adapt to even just help you go up that continuum 5% or 10%? And that's the first tool that we introduce people to. It gives them something tangible to check in with themselves, to hold themselves accountable, to know where they're at. Because look, at the end of the day, mental health, you can't see it. If I say to you, Jace or Cam, can you show me your mental health? You can't take your brain out and go, well, here it is. Where this is something tangible, where it's like, well, this is where I'm at. This is what I need to do. And us as human beings, we like things that are tangible.
That's a good, I think that, and thank you for your question, by the way, Neil. We will get to those in about 10 minutes or so. So if people do want to submit questions, please feel free. There's a little question function there. But Dan, there's something there that when we were talking earlier, you were talking about Wayne Bennett, and he gave you some kind of tangible pieces that you started working with and that area. And I'd love to dive into that example. I think is
that the recalibrating exercise I told you about?
Yeah, the recalibrating. And also I think Jason, you talked about a little bit about Dan's kind of coming out story there.
Yeah. Yeah, I could start with the coming out story and then throw it to Dan. The coming out, so to call, I suppose that's where we teach a lot of the value-based things and like, as Dan mentioned, and those things are really emotional intelligence skills that you should know about yourself, that self-awareness piece, so that you can understand differences and changes in others and help those people around you. I think that's probably when Dan did come out and say, I'm type 2 bipolar, and that, there was a lot of people going, oh, what is that? Did you know? And I've been close to Dan for so long. I'm like, yeah, could you not tell from this and that and these different things? And they're like, oh yeah, now that I think about it. But I think those sort of skills that the emotional intelligence and the awareness of self, and then therefore other people, and knowing your mates and your teammates or your co-workers, is a really big part of that. And I was quite surprised by the lack of awareness that came out, or the lack of people that thought that Dan might have a mental illness. And you know, although they're like, oh yeah, I suppose that makes sense, they probably weren't so much aware of it. So I think understanding and your friends and colleagues is a really big part of that. And I was quite shocked that people within our sport, we spend so much time together, we're always talking, weren't aware of certain things that Dan was going through, and not just Dan, that lots of other people around us were going through. And I think that it is probably a changing thing, but back whatever 5-6 years ago, maybe even longer, it wasn't so trained and educated, and people weren't as switched on to what their mates were going through. And I think you've seen plenty of good examples of those awareness programs since then. Yeah,
and you're 100% right, Jace. Like, we don't know what we don't know. And I remember when I think it was the Black Dog Institute come in that time, and they did that talk, and it was kind of like, I think you and a few of the other boys go, like, surely that hit home with you. And I was like, yeah, I felt like he was talking exactly to me. But just back then, it just wasn't anything that was spoken about. Like, I didn't know what mental health was, mental illness, resilience. It wasn't even really a word. When Wayne Bennett did come, obviously he has a greater level of, I think, self-awareness, emotional intelligence as a coach, but as a mentor and a human being, because he's obviously very experienced in that space where it's not necessarily so much about the game plans. Like, our game plans weren't that technical, were they, Jace? Back of the field, you have 4 drives, kick long, kick chase, and don't give away penalties, where he motivated you as an individual and got you to being the best version of yourself off the field, so that you can be better on the field. And I know that Jace with EA Elite Athlete Business School does very similar stuff, the same as what we do. In a work environment, if you look after your people and your workers, and you look after them and you genuinely care about them and provide them the resources, the support to be better versions of themselves, not just at work, but at home as well and away from work, they're going to be more productive. They're going to be, they're going to have less sick days. There's going to be less claims. There's going to be all these different things, which the data we've got shows. And that's just a big part of how you treat people, and having emotional intelligence and understanding how other people are going, it helps with that massively. And I guess the point, what you were saying, Cam, with what Wayne taught me was, it's a bit of a we just call it our recalibrating exercise. So a lot of times in life, people aren't necessarily happy with where they're at. And look, there's 3 sort of pillars that he sort of taught me, because I obviously do have type 2 bipolar. I had a not such good upbringing around domestic violence and drug abuse and physical violence and things like that really did affect me as a young person, where footy helped me get back on the straight and narrow with that. But I did go through some injuries, in particular when I missed the grand final in 2010. But I dealt with my issues a lot through drugs and alcohol and self-medication. And it was through Wayne's support, my wife and my mum being able to just give me an understanding that there's other ways in which you can do that. And it's okay to do this, because I was shit scared to do that. I was supposed to be the tough front rower. So there's no way I was doing that. But look, one of the things that was just really simple that helped me get back, and it's something that I do ongoing as well, but it's just you check in with 3 areas of your life. You ask yourself, what are you doing for yourself on a daily basis? So your habits, your routines, your self-care. So is it exercise, nutrition, sleep, all those different things. So what are you doing for yourself on a daily basis? The next one is, how do you talk to yourself about yourself when you're by yourself? So it's that self-talk. Are you putting yourself down? Is it negative? Is it toxic? Are you judging yourself, telling yourself you're not good enough? And then the last one is, who do you spend most of your time with? So if you're hanging around people that are really negative, judgmental, toxic, they're bitching, they're talking about people behind their back, they're backstabbing, all those different things, they're not going to be good for you. So if you can address those three aspects of your life on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, you can near guarantee you're going to be in a better place than where you were when you first checked in. So that's just a really simple tool that the participants here can take away. Just making sure that what you're doing for yourself on a daily basis is good for you. The way you talk to yourself, you've got to be a bit kinder. You don't have to beat yourself up. There's enough things in life that'll beat you and put you down. And then making sure you're spending time and investing your time in people that are good for you.
That's a really good point for a question that Neil has shot in. So I'd really love to just throw this to you guys now. Maybe Jason, I'll ask you to answer this one first, because we've just heard from Dan a bit on the same topic. I'll click the wrong one there, but how do you believe that the toxic macho male culture, kind of that dominant competitive, being aggressive, that is predominant in a lot of cultures, impacts the mental health of everyone, but in particular men? How do you think that impacts a lot of that area?
Do you want to take that one, Jips?
Yeah, it is quite that sort of environment. And like Dan said, being the big tough front rower has its responsibilities. And so there is a big part of that, and it has adapted a little bit. It's getting better. So it's funny, some of the things that make you resilient, whether it be that confidence, that bravado that you're pushing off, and the individual things that drive you, also can become a cover for other things and rub people the wrong way. So it is that the bravado and a bit of an act at times. You have to, when you get up for a game, when you get to that point when it's go time, there's no negative self-talk. There can't be any of that stuff. It's all, I'm good, I'm building myself up. It's the same sort of emotions you go through when you get up and public speak, or you transition into something where you're coming up to a big thing. It all has to be up to that point, ready to go. And then there's a dip after that. So it is that culture that's changing a little bit. There is bigger parts of it, and mental awareness is a big part of that, where we spend a lot of time. It's funny, we teach a small business course, but the first two units are based on personal development, because without that, you can't be a good entrepreneur. Without being able to understand yourself, you can't lead others. And I think those are things that good sports cultures and good team cultures have in them, that it isn't that macho-ness is good for when you're building your testosterone, you're getting to the point where you're out to go. But there's other times when you need to understand that you need to adapt and evolve and ask those questions, have those conversations, and whether that be done through leadership camps or sometimes in workshops, those conversations can't be ignored, and that's what that sort of macho-ness can do. So come on, toughen up, and those sort of things they're getting less and fewer and far between. But I think it's with sport and any cultures, you need to schedule times where you're going to have real conversations, rather than you got enough time to be macho and throw tin around the gym and try and bench 120 kilos as Dan did in the last few weeks.
I think adding to what Jason's saying there, and obviously Neil's question, how does masculinity and ego in a work environment or whatever environment, how does that affect mental health? I think the answer to that question is it affects it massively. That's why men account for 76% of all suicides. There's 8 Australians that take their own life every single day, and 6 of them are men. And you look at it from a help-seeking behaviors for females. So mental illness is more prevalent among females. So their help-seeking behaviors are also better. So females are more likely to talk about it, more likely to seek support, more likely to reach out when they are going through those struggles, where us males, and society's been brought up really to get on with it, get over it and harden up. So where that masculinity and that ego gets into it is when you're brought up, and that's your conditioning, and it has been for 20, 30, 40 years, when you get to the point when you slide down that continuum and you're struggling to the point where your self-talk is you're having suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts, struggling, you've got financial pressures, work pressures, relationship breakdown, work, all these different things, that masculinity, that ego, it inhibits people from putting their hand up and seeking support, because they're worried about being judged, treated differently, what people will say about them, that whole thing that big boys don't cry. Okay. And it was interesting. I was out on a site in Grid Island doing we were doing some work out there with a mining client of ours. And I was talking to one of the safety reps. It was a lady, and she just finished one of our resilience workshops. And she said to me, she goes, have you ever thought about why the help-seeking behaviors are better in females? And she said, and then the suicide statistics, that it's so high in males. And this isn't obviously scientific evidence, but this was a point that she brought up. And she said, you've got kids? And I said, yeah. And she goes, have you ever thought about when you're between your daughter and your son, and when they fall over and hurt themselves? And she said, look at it. A lot of people with their daughters, they'll fall over and they'll cuddle them. You'll be right, darling. Hop up. You'll be okay. And then the son falls over or hurts themselves, and it's, come on, mate, you'll be right. Get up. Big boys don't cry. And it's sort of a little bit of a penny drop with me. It's like, well, yeah, I've said that. So from a young age, males are told to suppress their emotions, to get on with it, get over it, and harden up. And then that just builds and builds and builds to the point where when people are struggling, that stigma, that conditioning, that lack of education, awareness, emotional intelligence, whatever it is, it's inhibiting people from asking support when they need it. So that's why this awareness, this education, the training, the resources, the support, the emotional intelligence, everything that's being done in society, it is very, very much needed, because there's 3,046 people every single year taking their own lives at the moment, and it's just one's too many.
Mm. Actually, there's a follow-up question that Adam's popped through as well for you, Dan, which was, how difficult was it for you to realize when you needed help, given that, like rugby league players, and you'll probably resonate with this as well, Jason, you're trained to be kind of like gladiator, like no pain, no vulnerability on the field. So when was the actual point or time that how did you realize how difficult it was for you to raise the hand that you needed help? And when was the actual point in time or moment that you required help?
Look, for me, it was sort of midway through I'd ruptured my Achilles tendon in, I think it was round 20 of 2010. I can't remember the exact round. And it was kind of like the carpet had been pulled out and very much struggling. I hadn't had a relationship with my father, or really struggling relationships with my family. My partner at the time, we were sort of going through our own struggles. And then it was sort of the first person I walked out after I'd done the injury. She was the first person there for me to support me through that. But then it was the self-medication, and I was just doing that, and it was putting me, just sliding me further and further down that continuum. And it was exactly what Neil said before, the masculinity, the ego, like people would check in, yeah, I'm all good, no, I'm okay. And then I'd just keep self-medicating because I just escaped reality. It just took my mind away from it. It's how I seen my old man deal with a lot of his problems. And it was sort of the point. There was kind of two conversations that I had. The first one was with my mum, actually. I was at home, and she come over, and she kind of said to me, I'm going to tell you something you're not going to like to hear. And she said, you're becoming your father. And that was something when I remember that I never wanted to be like him. So that really, really hit hard, or hit home with me. And then the next one was just with Wayne. I was in training. The group, when you're injured, it's called the rehab group. So I was in rehab. I was by myself at the time. And Wayne just come in there. He shut the door and just sat down and had a bit of a chat with me. But he just checked in. He said, look, mate, I can see you're not in a good place. Like, what's going on? And that was that first time I sort of just broke down and lost it. And from that, like, he didn't say, oh, give me any secret answer. He just said, look, let's go and get you the support that you need. So that's where I come home. My wife, we spoke about it, and we booked in with the Black Dog Institute. And I remember me and her drove up there in Randwick, spent the day up there. And yeah, look, it was very confronting. I can admit I was shit scared, but at the end of it, it was like, I remember she'd say it as well. It was like a weight lifted off my shoulders after I got that diagnosis, because it's not that it's a label or anything like that. It was just, it gave me some understanding about why I was feeling the way I was, some of the behaviors, the traits, all those different things just started to make a bit of sense. And that kind of motivated me to know, okay, well, this is what it is. What do I now need to do to better manage it? No different to a physical injury. And then that's the mindset that I've had ever since. And the last 4 years, I've now been managing my type 2 bipolar medication free. Still with my clinical support, psychologist, psychiatrist, but I've just chose to put a lot of alternate things in place to be able to manage that, which I'm a big advocate for medication. If people need that to manage their mental health, that's no worries at all. I've just chosen a different option, but that's kind of the point where I got to asking for help. And what I say to people, putting your hand up for that first time and asking for that support, it's hard. And I'm not going to lie about that. It is hard, but it does get a whole lot easier. And it's like the weight of the world is lifted off your shoulders once you share that. Because I say to people, how can you get support or give support if it's a secret? You can't. So
that's it. We're starting to head towards the end a little bit now. So I don't want to cut it too short. Now that we're hitting in the middle of a lot of kind of the deeper stuff. But I think there's something I really wanted to get to before we finished with you, Jason. On that note, with people asking for help and the cultures at work at the moment, I think a big topic that we've talked about is team culture. And in the workplace, especially in larger organizations, dealing with values on the wall versus the actual culture and teams. And I'd love to take that conversation that you've just had there, Dan, around reaching out for help and your own journey, and then into when you walk into a workplace, Jason. What are the barriers that you see at the moment?
Yeah, well, it is a lot of that, and it's the same in sport. And we do have that self-awareness piece, and I think that is probably the most important thing, to find out what your values are, so that you can better make decisions to which corporation or which company it matches. And then you look at big businesses; they're always talking about team and these little dynamics around team effectiveness, etc. Within professional sport, like I mentioned, that you do or die by it. A good team culture, you either win or you lose. And if you've got a bad team culture, doesn't matter what sort of team you've got, you'll lose. So that is the reality of team sport. And I think in the corporate world, it's probably spoken about a lot more than it's actioned. So yeah, I think there is a lot to learn from the way that the dynamic that it happens in sport, because it is result based, win or lose. In sport, it's adaptable and it's arguable, and it's like numbers were decent this month, but I think it does mean a lot more about the awareness piece. If you've got a value of friendship around your workplace and you're not asking those sort of questions. So I look back at the time, I did know, I could tell that Dan was not right, and I didn't ask him enough questions, and those sort of things might have helped him, but the fact that I didn't, it was a secret to like a secret I kept. Like when people were like, oh, well, Dan's, well, I knew that, but why didn't I speak to him? I spoke to him little bits about it, but more so when it came out and it was okay to talk about it, felt okay to talk about. And yeah, I'm sure the weight came off his shoulders because, oh, phew, if I can have these conversations that I'm meaning to have with him. But I suppose if I had have shown a bit more leadership and it got to a point, I would have asked them myself. So I think that's within the sports culture. It needs to be based on what the values are on the wall. You got to know your individual values and how they align to that company, and what your role is within that, to make sure that you can live up with them, because they do get torn down by every CEO, every footy coach gets torn down, and they put similar words up there again the next time, but it's more about the actions behind them and how your individual role can help apply those corporate team values or the real sport team values. They're all aligned in some way, but if it helps you make a better decision about yourself or someone that you care about, or someone in your organization, or be more aware of that, then they're the sort of things that can lead to a lot of success in a workplace, and a lot of success in relationships and happiness.
And
yeah,
it's 100% that you say that there, Jace, around values. Like a lot of people don't really understand their own values. So how are they going to understand a business's values, or whatever team you're part of's values, if they really don't even understand how it applies to themselves? So I really found that that's something that what your Powerful Presenting course does. It really does help you understand your values as an individual. And then it's something that whenever you got to make a tough decision in life, because I didn't get that the best upbringing, but if it's whatever the decision is, if it doesn't align with your values, well, the decision's easy. Or if you're working in a team or a workplace or whatever it is, and whatever you're working, like you look in our environment, the ones that we had with Wayne, like we had to the point where you're like leaving the toilet seat down, something simple as that. Like you don't leave strapping tape in the showers. All those little things, from the smallest of things, as part of our values was team first. If you actually live and breathe those values, it's, as Jay said, you're going to be successful. But it's about then trying to find the individuals who are not aligned with those values and either getting them to adapt or shift, or making the tough decision and getting them out of there, because that can just become toxic and a cancer.
Yeah, and I think that's with you talking about the toilet seat and stuff like that. Wayne was a big advocate of, and I think I still believe in it today. Is the things you do when people aren't watching, that they make up a lot of time, and a lot of your life is those decisions you make when no one's holding you accountable, but you're making them because you believe in it rather than that. And that's whether that goes with your mental health or your training. You've gone out and you've done some exercise. No one knows you've done exercise, and you know it's good for you, and you get the kick. And also the other thing of that, no one knows you didn't do it. So you've got to keep yourself honest and those feelings, because the work that you do when no one's watching is the sort of things that go to make up the person you are, and how much you'll be able to give to yourself, give to your business, or give to a company or your family.
I think that's a great place to finish with our last question for today, which was what do you think the future looks like a bit? Because if we're talking about decisions when no one's watching, I know that if I'm not in a workplace, there's a lot of time when no one's seeing me or the work that I'm doing until it's done, or until I'm talking to someone about it.
Yeah, I know you're the hardest worker at Go On. I can vouch for that.
Andrew and Vu are on the call. I'm pretty sure they're watching you, so don't worry. You're getting tracked everywhere you go. They've got cameras. They've got cameras where you don't even know they exist.
I got your back, Cam. I got your back.
But I think for you boys, just quickly, like for you each, what do you think of the coming future? I guess where we are able to connect more easily digitally, but we'll have a lot more time just without someone watching.
Yeah, I'm excited by it. To be honest, I'm a bit of a tech nerd at heart.
Since when?
Yeah, since I got this watch. It's like a smart watch. But no, I've found it interesting, the transition and the innovation that has forced our business to do, and the people within that. But I'm also sitting there. It's so funny. My wife has just started working at Commonwealth Bank, and she actually hasn't been to the office. So she's been there for 5 weeks now, and she's been to the office to pick up a computer. She's asking questions like, if it's not like this, if it's not technology based, if we're not doing a video meeting, what do we do? So it's that mindset. And the other side is she doesn't know how to, like, what the office is. How do they have all these meetings? So I think what she's learned out of that is, well, how it works in the COVID world. She hasn't learned how it works in the normal world. So I think all the good things that we take out of the learnings that we've got, whether it be, I don't have to go to Queensland to speak to Andrew and the Go One team. I can dial in, and I know you guys have been doing that for a while, but I think we're so hands-on, and so to be able to save some time and spend some time maybe at home with your family is better, and we'll learn from that. But then there's other things that we really miss, and we won't be able to replace. We want to replace long term, and that's, for me, giving people hugs. Is probably my thing there, and the innovations that we take and we learn from, I want to keep with, and that whether that's working from home. I think there's plenty of businesses out there that will see a lot of value and productivity being done at this time, and then there's other businesses not so much. But I think that's, with this experience and this bounce back, and we talked about, the topic being resilience. The more you can adapt and take what you've learned and keep the good stuff, the better off you'll be in the future.
I sort of, exactly what Jace is sort of saying. And it is an interesting thing, something I do think about. What is going to be the new normal, so to speak, moving forward? I look at it from the work that we're doing. Like, we've taken a whole face-to-face business that everything had been cancelled, now being able to deliver it online in 7 weeks. So I really do, though, think that in particular with education and training, it's going to become a blended journey. I don't think you can't take away the face-to-face aspect, because us as a human being, we're a community being, and having those face-to-face interactions, it releases those feel-good chemicals, the serotonin, the oxytocin, the dopamine, which we need as a human being, which you don't get quite as well with the online stuff. But I think that the digital aspect of it is you can reach more people. So the people that are in the rural and the remote, the small businesses in particular in our field that maybe potentially couldn't afford training programs or things like that, they can now access that on a digital platform for a very low cost. And I know that the Go One provide a very, very, very good service with this type of stuff, where we're going to be able to reach more people. It's going to be done in a blended learning environment. So that's from our perspective, and that's what we're adapting to. But just the society in general, one thing I feel that as a community, we're going to be a lot more grateful that's probably one thing that I can definitely see. In particular, when the lockdown laws or the self-isolating goes, we are a community being. So people are going to be a lot more grateful with having the interactions with their loved ones, with their family members, having a job to go to, having a purpose, because all these things have been taken away like that. And as I say, it's pulled the carpet out from underneath people. So I think people are going to have a lot more perspective. They're going to change their perception around things that, and not take so many things for granted. And I really just think people will probably operate a little bit smarter, and look after themselves a whole lot more, because things can change, as we've seen, from what it was just talking about it around Christmas time to sort of mid-February, March. It was life changed, gone. And I feel so much for so many of the small businesses like my partners that have had to close, and some will never open again. And I've got so much, I guess, I just feel so much for them, because people have worked their whole lives, worked their asses off, and those things have been taken away. So I would just wish a lot of the Australian population and the global population all the luck in getting back on their feet, whatever that is, moving forward. But one thing, human beings, we are resilient. So I think we'll be all okay as long as we do what works for us.
Awesome. I think that's a great point for us to say thank you everyone for taking part, especially Neil from the UK in Merseyside. He says it's 2:40 a.m. here at the moment, so I really appreciate you jumping on and taking a look.
He's putting in the overtime. Nice.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You can find all the different people here. We'll share some details, all those pieces. I'm aware that we said it'd be 11:30 when we'd finish, and it's a bit over, so I won't take too long. But thank you again, Dan and Jason. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Cam. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
All good.